welcome to It's in the Box by White Acre Studio. I'm Cynthia, and I was just reminiscing and realizing that if you've been here from the beginning, I've been with you through 2 seasons. We've done winter together, we've done spring together. Can you believe it's summer? And we are making for our summer decor a vintage-inspired, patriotic mason jar lantern. That was a mouthful. But what you'll end up with is an authentic mason jar that you have painted, distressed to look vintage, and then you get a light to put inside to light it up. So this is where we're headed. I'm going to put this aside, and I'm going to show you what is in the box to make this. You get 2 mason jars, so you're actually going to be able to make 2 identical, or you can mix it up, which I think is fun. And then you have your 2 little candle lights that will go inside. I will slide them to the side. You have a cup that you're going to be doing some mixing in, and you have a bag of plaster of Paris. I haven't used plaster of Paris since I had to make a volcano in elementary school. This is just a piece of paper that you're going to be using to measure and mark out your rings. You have your paint sponges, you have your paints, and when you look at them, you're going to see that these really are a vintage version of red, white, and blue. So your white is not that picket fence white, it's more what I would call the antique white, which I love. The blue is definitely that federal blue, colonial blue, maybe if you want to call it. I'm going to set the box aside. And here we have the little stuff. You have sandpaper that you're going to use at the very end. This is how you distress the paint off to make it look old. This is your embellishment that you're going to put around it. And this is your mixing cup, and you'll be using this when you're using your paints. Okay, so I'm going to talk just for a minute about why you're using the plaster of Paris in with your paint. So when you're painting, you're creating a base coat, and by putting the plaster of Paris in the paint, you're basically creating what they sell in the stores that's called chalk paint, which I have bought, which is very expensive, and this is how you can actually make it. And it's a matte finish. When you use it on furniture, sometimes people wax it when they're done. There's whole, lessons about how to use chalk paint on furniture. When we're using it today, it's just a really simple process. We're going to be covering our entire base in this paint, and then we'll be going back to put on our red, white, and blue. And at that point, you'll be using this as an actual paint, not as the base. Okay, so I'm going to be dumping plaster of Paris into my cup, and I need this amount of water to mix with it. So I have my handy dandy water here. There we go. And you have enough of this to do your 2 jars. You're going to find that you have more than enough. All right, and then you're mixing this amount of water in, and then you're stirring it up till it's smooth. You really do want it to be smooth, not lumpy, because it's going to be mixed with paint. Okay, and it is not a long process to do that. So once again, we're giving you a trick to put in your crafting arsenal, which is the making of chalk paint, so that this could go on into other projects. You're going to use this measuring cup now and use this 1 jar of white paint. This is what I always need to do before the video starts, and I never think to do it. There we go. You're putting your white paint in here so that you can mix it with the plaster of Paris. So if you'll bear with me, I got to let this drip out a little bit. When I did this as a sample, I dropped the whole thing in here, and it was quite the mess. So don't do that. Hold on to it. And I think that's good. All right. And you're only putting a couple drops of this in, so you want to really eyeball it well. There we go. I think that was okay. And there we go. We have what I would call antique white chalk paint. If you find that you didn't make quite enough to cover it the first time, you have the ingredients to keep going. You have a little bit more paint. You're going to get one of your brushes. You're going to take off your ring. You're saving that ring. Again, that's going to be part of the embellishment. And you're going to be coating the entire jar. You have choices to make. You can paint all the way up over what are called the threads, which is how you put your lid on, or you can do what I do, which is start after that lip and paint all the way down, and I paint down to the base. You're painting right over all the measurements. At some point, you're going to be able to remove some of the paint so that those are more visible. So here we go. And it's not important that it be just completely saturated, and this is where I'll tell you that I saw jars like this in a crafting store. It's just coincidence. I happened to be shopping for something else, and I knew we were making these, and I noticed in the patriotic seasonal aisle they had mason jars. And the thing that was interesting about it to me, besides the price, was that they're not real mason jars. And I think there's something really fun about using an authentic mason jar. But they were completely enameled, so they look really manufactured. I know we use the word vintage over and over again, but it really is the style that we're aiming for. And I think you know the difference when you're looking at that patriotic aisle. You have flags that are vivid, brand new red, white, and blue. And then you have the ones that look what I would call colonial. And they're using these colors. And that is the style that we're working in. Almost all the way around. So as you can imagine, one of the steps to this process is the waiting game, because everything has to be dry to move on to the next step. So I'm going to get this completely coated. I'm going to go back and make sure it's looking as a base coat the way I want it to look. But remember, you're going to be painting over it. Even the white is going to get painted over it. So it doesn't have to be, as I said, completely saturated. And on that note, we're going to pause and we're going to let that mason jar dry. And we're back with a dry base coated jar. You'll see in your box that you have what's going to be your straight edge. And I just pulled a piece of tape because I'm a wimp about holding it on and drawing at the same time. But I'm sure some of you would be able to do that. And this is just how you're making your lines to make your stripes. So there's no right or wrong to how high up. They don't have to be even. And just using a pencil to lightly, see, now I'm looking at that and I want it up a little higher. There we go. Lightly making a line on either side of your straight edge so that you can map out where your red, your white, and your blue are going to go. And you're drawing right over Mr. Mason's name. What would we have done without Mr. Mason and his jars? And I wonder when he was making them if he realized we'd be taking something that was an essential from canning and decorating our homes with them. There we go. Easy peasy. All right. So in the painting of this, you're going to want to paint your red and your blue and then let this whole thing dry before you go back in and use the white paint, which is different than the paint you used with the plaster of Paris, to paint your middle. So I used my paper plate and I dumped out my little jars of paint. I used this stick that I had for stirring just to get it out of the jar to go from there. So I'm going to start with my red because I'm choosing to put my red at the top. You can dab or you can stroke. You have a line that's going to give you a guide as to where to stop. Remember, it doesn't have to be exact because you're going to be painting that middle part with your white. So there's moments where you can touch up. And it is really, really important not to rush it because you don't want that base coat to be wet when you're doing this. So in between steps, take a breather. And I'm doing the whole top up to the rim, and then I'm going to go back and do the bottom part of this stripe up to the line that I've drawn. And I'm actually going to work backwards to do that. So I'm going to start at the line and work my way back to where I had been painting. Here we go. So I showed up here to work on this today. I got out of my car and I was overwhelmed with the most bizarre ringing noise. And it took me a minute to figure out that this was cicada season on the mountain. And I don't know if you've heard about the cicadas that come out every so many years. This particular batch has been waiting to come out for 17 years. And there are so many cicadas on the mountain that when you're standing outside, it sounds like aliens are landing. It is fascinating. And because the bugs aren't right up against me, pretty cool. Not sure I'd want to be up close and personal with a swarm of cicadas, even though they're harmless. But right now, it's the most amazing thing. And I definitely connect that noise with summer. That's a summertime noise. All right, there's our red. And then I'm going to go in to get the blue. Working at the bottom, I'm going to start at the line that I've drawn. And mine is fairly narrow at the bottom, so I'm actually going to be able to do this in one swipe. And as I said, the other way you can do it, you don't have to swipe. You can sort of sponge. Either way works. Right at the line, you probably want to swipe instead of sponge, but sponging is a great way to fill in. And at the end, I'm going to show you variations that you can do with your red, white, and blue, all of them in stripes, but not all of them in the same configuration. So there's some fun you can have, and it just depends on whether you want to have two identical jar lanterns, or if you want them to look different. So one of the things I had thought, if I were doing my two, because I do like this stripe. I think on my second one, I'd probably put the red at the bottom and the blue at the top, and then they'd be the same but different. There we go. Red, white, and blue, and we're going to dry, and then we'll come back and do our white stripe in the middle. So the next step is just to get that white stripe in the middle. So we're going to be doing that white stripe and then pausing again because we want this all to be dry before we do the final step, which is what makes it look old, which is what I like about it. So you're covering the base coat. You're using the same brush that you had to put that base coat on, but you'll see that you're getting a much more, almost what I would call eggshell white between your two primary colors. And that's why it's really important that this be completely dry, the red and the blue, because you really don't want to make new colors. You want this to be a clear flag pattern. Flag Day here is Monday. And then very quickly on its heels comes the 4th of July. So I work in a senior home, and We wait and put our patriotic decorations up for the entire month of July. So this is really timely, and in fact, this is a craft that I could do with them, and they would love this because it's big stripes. They can see to do that. And they love when the crafts that we're doing are actually something that we use to decorate where they live, so where they're eating. So they're much less excited about a craft that has no purpose, and this one has a clear purpose. I would be just as quick to put utensils in the kitchen to decorate for the holiday as I would be to put the light in that you're getting to make it a lantern. So you really do have some options. And I would also, I love this color. I really do. I love this eggshell. I would also use this as a vase, and I think this would be a cute vase for a patio. And I do a lot of bouquets of not just flowers, but herbs. I like to make bouquets of herbs, and this is a perfect size for that kind of bouquet. And then you can have your herbs right next to the grill. It's decorative, but they're right there for you to use. All right, there is our white coat. We've got our red, white, and blue. We're just gonna pause for a minute while it dries, and then I'll show you how to make this look like you got it in a vintage shop and that it belonged to your great-great-granny. And here we are at the fun part where we get to distress and then embellish. So you have a teeny piece of sandpaper. And again, I'm going to caution you not to jump the gun. You don't want to do this till it's completely dry. You don't want to take off more paint than you want to. And the really fun places to take it off are where the letterings are raised up. So you want to take a little bit off along those lines, at least I do. And you've got the measurements where you can take a little off with your sand. Ooh, I love that. And then on the other side are other measurements. I'm a big pickle person. I have these jars everywhere because I buy a lot of canned pickles from specialty markets. And I love that you can reuse them and they measure. And then you want to go back and just take a little bit of off every color because in the end, you want it to look like it wore off over time. And I have to be careful right now because this is still teensy beatsy wet, so I don't want to take too much. And I'll probably end up going back and taking a little more when I know it's completely dry. And then you have a piece of twine that you can tie into a bow at the top. I'm more like a tie it in a knot kind of person, because to me that looks more vintage and functional than, a decorative bow. And I know when I buy pickles, they come with the little tag on them, and the canner puts her ingredients and what they are, and she ties them on with the twine. So this is really an authentic touch. And then your ring goes on top to give it a finished look. And then you have a candlelight. You turn it on at the bottom. If you've never done this before, there's a little plastic tab that you pull, which allows the connection to be made, and then you drop this inside. And especially at night, this is going to glow red, white, and blue. But as I said, I think you can use this for many things. And I have an example of one where the stripes go the other way. So again, this one, not even using a straight edge, just eyeballing where to put those stripes. This looks very flaggish because it's laid out like the actual flag. So it's whatever your pleasure is. But I think that overall, I feel like this is going to be a better summer for all of us now that we are actually out and about and barbecuing and with friends. And I just wish you the best summer ever. And thanks from It's in the Box.